Early Dakota. No other group of people currently living in Minnesota has been here longer than the Dakota. Their way of life many generations ago was very different than it is today. Read oral histories passed down through the years by Dakota storytellers to learn about the culture and values of the early Dakota people. So, key terms: Minnesota, Makose, teepee, generosity, kinship, extended family, income, human capital, and respect. So make sure to search out those key terms. You're going to need to know what they mean. Look for what important Dakota value does the story about the badger and the bear teach. In Dakota culture, what are some ways people show respect for one another? How was human capital a part of early Dakota culture? Explain how people can think about history in two different ways, circular and linear. And where do Dakota people live today? Of all the people who live in modern-day Minnesota, the Dakota have lived here the longest. In fact, the name Minnesota comes from a Dakota word, Nisota Makase. Nisota Makase. Dakota history in this place goes back hundreds, some believe thousands of years, to the time when woolly mammoths and giant bison roamed the land. How can we understand what life was like for people who lived so long ago? We can start by listening to their stories. For centuries, the Dakota have kept their history alive through oral history to connect the Dakota people to each other and to their past. Many Dakota are familiar with at least some of these oral histories. A few have a special talent for making the stories come alive. These expert storytellers make sure that the oral traditions of the Dakota do not fade from memory. Storytellers are living books. Their minds are libraries of Dakota traditions and history. In this chapter, we will imagine that we've gone back in time about 500 years to visit a Dakota elder in her home near the shore of a frozen Minnesota lake. As we do this, we should respect the ways of our host. Everyone remain silent until the storyteller has finished her tale. A visit with the storyteller. It is the middle of winter, the time of year that the Dakota call the hard moon, or Witehi Witehi. It is very cold and the snow is deep. The ice on the lake shifts, thunders, and echoes inside the storyteller's teepee. However, it's warm and cozy. A log fire burning in the middle. It provides warmth and light. The smoke escapes through an opening at the top of the teepee. 5 children in buffalo robes have gathered around a fire. They have brought gifts of food. Now they are eagerly waiting to hear from the storyteller, who is both a teacher and an entertainer. On a cold evening, she will treat the children to a tale about 2 familiar animals. Teepee, a cone-shaped house made by stretching animal skins over a frame of wooden poles. The Badger and the Bear. A family of badgers lived in a comfortable little house under a hill. One day, a visitor appeared at the Badger family's door. It was a large black bear. He looked very hungry. The Badger and children The Badger and children were afraid, but the parents were not. They welcomed the stranger inside and invited him to take a seat. The mother cooked a thick slice of deer meat, called venison, and offered it to a guest. The bear devoured the meat. When he was done, he ambled away without a word. The next day the bear returned. Again, the badgers invited him in and fed him. The bear came back every day for many weeks. Each time the badgers welcomed him with smiles and open arms. Then one day the bear showed up at the badger's door with his family in a gruff voice. He ordered the badgers to leave the house so that his family could move in. The badgers knew they could not argue with the bear. They cried as they left their cozy home. That night, they slept cold and hungry under a giant rock. After several nights with no food, the father badger returned to the den to beg the bear for a few pieces of meat. "I would not trouble you," he said, "but my little folks are starving." The bear just laughed at the badger and told him to go away. Finally, a powerful being known as the Avenger learned of the badger's troubles. He headed for the den to teach the bear a lesson. When the bear saw the Avenger approaching, he shook with fear. He fled the house with his family, never to return. When the bear family was gone, the badgers moved back into their little home. Their troubles were over. Okay, us ladies, let's see. So here is the teepee. You can see a lady in the teepee. The painting shows Dakota men hunting muskrats with spears in winter, in the middle of winter. Okay, so let's move on. Lessons learned. Storytellers' tales often contain lessons. The story of the badger, the bear, taught children about one of the most important Dakota values, generosity, or ohawashte. As the story suggests, being generous in Dakota society often involved the sharing of food. When a hunter killed an animal, he knew that it would feed more than his immediate family. Dakota custom required families share the meat with anyone who came by their teepee. Dakota elders instructed children to give food freely, holding back nothing for themselves. If the food ran out, then all would starve together. The Dakota considered sharing a necessary part of being a good relative. Few things were more important than kinship. By sharing food, the Dakota strengthened their bonds and other members of their extended family, or Tioshpaya. They also made kinship ties with neighbors, treating them like relatives even if they did not belong to the same family. Generosity went beyond sharing food. Being generous was important in all aspects of Dakota relationships. Another way the Dakota showed generosity was through a custom known as honorship. This was the giving of gifts in someone else's name as a way to show respect. It worked like this. If you wanted to honor someone, you would give a gift to someone else and say that it came from the person you wish to honor. The custom strengthened kinship ties by bringing three people, you, the person you honored, and the person who received the gift, into a closer relationship. When the Dakota gave gifts, they often received gifts in return. They did not expect to receive something of equal value. For them, the value was the act of giving. Dakota elders reminded children that it is better to give and have nothing left than to appear selfish. They believe that property comes back to those who let it go freely. You may hear people talk about income. Most often, income describes the money or wages people earn for work they do. Money is used to buy important things like food, clothing, and shelter. In order to earn more money, people strive to improve their knowledge and skills to do their jobs better. Experts in economics refer to the job skills and knowledge of workers as human capital. People improve their human capital by doing many things: practicing their skills, receiving education and training, staying healthy and being productive, connecting with people who can help them. For the Dakota people, hundreds of years ago, earning money was not part of the culture. They get what they needed by gathering, making it themselves, or by trading for it. Like people today, however, they needed human capital. That is, they needed to develop their abilities in order to succeed in life. The Dakota highly valued hunting skills. This kind of human capital ensured they could help provide meat for themselves and for those who had less. As the story of the badger and the bear teaches us, generosity was also highly valued by the Dakota, and still is. By practicing hunting games and learning from expert hunters around them, young Dakota hunters invested in their human capital. In doing so, they improved their hunting skills, brought home more meat, and benefited their communities. Another visit with the storyteller. The harsh winds of the hard moon are howling outside as the children gather again in the storyteller's teepee. It's the perfect time for a ghost story. The children know it is forbidden to speak aloud the names of those who have died. Still, the storyteller wants them to understand that the spirits of the dead have lessons to teach. The ghost wife. There once was a young man who preferred to live away from his people. He spent most of his days among the animals, learning their ways and their language. Most of the people of his village thought he was strange. One day, while he was lying in a meadow, a beautiful young woman appeared before him. He recognized her. She was the daughter of one of his village's most respected elders. The young man had never paid much attention to her. He was always too busy with his animal friends. But now she stood before him. He fell in love with her. And when he remembered she had died 10 years before, she was a ghost. The young man pushed away his fear and determined to make the young woman his wife. Every day he left his village to meet secretly with his new love. He built her a lodge made of pine boughs. She cooked him meals of venison and mended his moccasins. They lived happily together as husband and wife. Soon, though, the man grew tired of secrecy. He wanted his family to meet his new wife. He asked her to move to the village with him. "I will," she replied, "but only if you agree to live by my rules." The most important rule was that the young man should never raise his voice in the teepee. "I agree," he said. The young couple moved to the village. They lived apart from the rest of the people in a small white teepee. With time, they had 2 children, a son and a daughter. They were very happy. Then one night, the young man came home tired and hungry after a long hunt. The children began to cry and would not be quieted. Their father, forgetting his promise, yelled at them. Instantly, the fire went out, and the teepee went dark. The children and their mother vanished, and to the young man's eternal regret, they never returned. Another lesson learned. The story of the ghost wife taught an important lesson about family life in Dakota society. Mothers, fathers, children, and other relatives all usually lived together in the family teepee or bark lodge. It was often crowded inside, and family members were expected to show each other respect, called wo'ohada. That meant, among other things, speaking softly, so as not to bother the other people. Yelling, as the young man in the story did, was not acceptable. Speaking softly was just one way that members of a Dakota family showed respect and courtesy to each other. Children learned early on to move carefully inside the home. Tripping or falling onto another person was considered a serious mistake. Children also learned to honor their family members' privacy by keeping their eyes lowered at all times. The showing of respect and courtesy was especially important during the night. The Dakota considered it very bad manners to watch others while they slept, so they tried to make sure that didn't happen. Sometimes they screened their sleeping areas with robes and drapes. When that was not possible, they made sure to sleep facing the teepee's wall. In fall, Dakota men and women gathered wild rice from the lakes and ponds. Wild rice was preserved and eaten throughout the year. The sharing of this food would reflect what Dakota valued. The Dakota also expected people to show respect and courtesy outside the teepee. For example, when children talked to their elders, they knew they should speak with respect. If their uncle's name was Swift Cloud, they would call him "My Uncle Swift Cloud," never Swift Cloud. Adults, too, had used respectful kinship terms when speaking to each other. Even when they weren't related by blood, they might use the family title like sister or uncle when talking to someone they had never met before. In this way, even a stranger was treated like a relative. Kinship ties were very important in Dakota society, and one could never have too many relatives. The Dakota Nation. Dakota kin lived all across the woods and plains, which covered the land from the St. Croix River west of the Rocky Mountains. The stories and customs of this large and diverse group differed from village to village. Dakota, who lived in the north and east, hunted game in the deep woods, harvested wild rice from marshes, and pulled fish from countless lakes and rivers. Those who lived in the south and the west were prairie people who followed the migrations of the revered buffalo. Though spread out across different landscapes, all Dakota groups considered themselves part of one large nation called the Dakota Oyati. Throughout the nation, some things stayed the same from year to year, such as the importance of kinship. Other things changed. Babies were born, people got older and died. New ways of doing things were discovered. Sometimes new people entered their lives. Some of these people came and went. Others, though, would bring changes that would forever alter the lives of the Dakota people.